Physical schools have reopened in Trinidad and Tobago for the Form 4s, 5s, and Form 6s. Bear in mind, Form 6s are two forms, lower 6 and upper 6. So that would be 4 forms are supposed to physically be in school right now. This physical reopening was or is still filled with bacchanal. That's the perfect word for right there. It's filled with some bacchanal on many different sides. One of the primary problems is because there has to be a splitting. The splitting of the vaccinated and unvaccinated students is creating for quite a bit of contention. Contention from the teachers in the first place because of the logistics of teaching vaccinated and unvaccinated, some in person, some online, and then there are still the SBs. The whole entire reason you wanted the Form 4s, 5s, and 6s to be out physically in person in school is because there are things in that level of education where you basically need to be in person to get some things done, the SBAs, the labs, etc. So some of the teachers are saying logistically it is impossible, and even some of the alternatives put some of their students at a great disadvantage. And there are some teachers, even with all the criticisms you could have for teachers, you must admit, if you went to school for a lengthy period of time, you'd have surely been witness to at least a couple of teachers who really legitimately care about their students. And many of those teachers would not want to be teaching. It would not feel right to be teaching in a situation where you know you're severely disadvantaging a big chunk of your students. And now it seems clear, or it is clear and it is obvious, that even among the vaccinated students, many are not turning out to school. And to me, that was kind of predictable also. Because if you look at it, in-person schooling and online schooling in this present time and in this present situation both have their disadvantages and advantages, pros and cons. And according to where you are in life, according to what kind of a student you are, what kind of a parent the parents are, a student may very well be vaccinated and the pros may outweigh the cons for them staying home and doing online schooling. So although they are vaccinated, they may prefer that. And I am getting the feeling, I would not be surprised if, as we see the numbers decrease right now, that it allows some people to be more comfortable in staying home also and keeping their children home. But let's see the news and what the news says about that. If you haven't clicked that like button yet, please do tap it and make sure it's selected. Drop a comment if you have something to say, and don't forget to subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Pupils skip school. Principals, teachers ready amid low turnout. Several pupils turned up for physical classes yesterday but were turned away as they had only one vaccine shot to show for admittance. At Success Laventille Secondary School, Principal Stacey Lizama stood waiting to physically welcome fully vaccinated students for the start of the new school term around 8 a.m. yesterday. The school day began at 8:30 a.m. and ended at 2:30 p.m. Lizama, as other principals, teachers and staff and support staff across the country had turned up to greet pupils in Forms 4s, 5 and 6 who are fully vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus. A few minutes later, a uniform-clad teen carrying a heavy book bag turned up. When the security guard checked for her vaccination card, she was kindly advised by Lizama to return to school after she had gotten her second vaccine. She politely left. So a student who only had one vaccine shot turned up and she was turned away. Now, we're going to get a little more into that further on, but at the face of it, at the start of it, that is ridiculous. The level of seriousness they are treating the vaccinated students with, when we know the students stand less risk than the adults from the virus, and that we may very well have a situation here where the security guard who is checking for the student's vaccination card, maybe even unvaccinated, where goodly principal, Mrs. or Miss Lizama, I do not know, I'm just using you as an example in this case, where goodly principal may very well be unvaccinated and she could be there and turn away a student who is unvaccinated. While this entire system, we are told, we are paying all this money, the billions of dollars promised this year in our budget for our education system is supposed to be all for our students and all for the children to benefit their education. And that's the system as it is right now, right? Okay. Asked about the first day of school, Lizama said teachers are here. We have about 300 to 400 pupils among the Form 4s and 5s. We are ready and willing to teach them. We want our children to do well. At St. George's College in Barataria, the security guard said while the teachers were there, no pupils had shown up at that time. A parent said the school was conducting an online assembly for both vaccinated and non-vaccinated pupils. Per attendance at Barataria South Secondary School, the security guard said more than 10 pupils had entered the school. Teachers had reported for duty, and the principal said no comment. Opposite, the cafe proprietor was optimistic sales would pick up with the school's reopening. And they go on for a while to several schools, and in most schools it seems like that was the general trend, that few students turned up. More teachers than students turned up in the schools, and that's not what it was supposed to be. One of the principals in this is quoted as saying here too, it might be a different picture. The pupils are saying, if my friends are not coming, why should I come? We have to wait till the end of the week and see how it turns out. And that's what I was saying. I wouldn't doubt that as pupils and students see, pupils are students, but as they see their friends, their fellow students staying home and doing their classes online, only some of the students who really feel they may need it, or some of the students who have parents who really feel they may need it, may be the ones left in school. Because if a student is functioning pretty well in an online class, you may not see the need to disturb them, whether they are vaccinated or not. A school official is quoted as saying the feedback is there's a lot of uncertainty on the part of parents. They are not sure what to do. They need to get a better understanding of what to do. Parents are asking, why should I incur an extra cost when the child can engage in virtual learning? Parents are now comfortable with the devices and they are slowly getting more adjusted to the online platform. Now, that's another reality. Remember, a lot of taxi fares and transport fares are on the rise. And if these fares are increasing, and you as a parent, you're looking at the holistic picture. You may have multiple children and you have already invested and upgraded your technology devices and your internet or whatever else so that you have a functioning plan on how to run your online schooling days. And now to pay that increase by possibly 25% in some places, that may cost a couple hundred extra per week, already in some financially unstable times. That's a reality that many parents, I'm sure, would be facing too. And whether vaccinated or not, again, students would not be coming out. Some students may not be coming out for those reasons. And from The Guardian, their article on it, fewer than 3,000 students to return to physical school. Now, this article actually gives you the number so we could see, we could have a better breakdown of what it was supposed to be and what it turned out to be. As hundreds of vaccinated students in Form 4s to 6, yes, they return to school, all well and fine. However, Education Minister Dr. Nayan Gadsby-Dali, who toured 2 secondary schools in Port of Spain to witness the reopenings firsthand, said close to 3,000 students from 110 schools turned out yesterday. Now, that's important to note if we know the total of how many students were supposed to turn out. So the minister added, further down in the article we see that, the minister added, though all students or parents have not yet responded to school nor ministry administered surveys regarding vaccination status, the total number of students from these 110 schools indicating that they are fully vaccinated up to this time is 5,976. So nearly 6,000 students and just under 3,000 students turned up. So just around half, nearly perfectly half of the students who were expected to turn up turned up. Now, these aren't unvaccinated students who we were expected to probably try to have a chance to turn up. No, these are vaccinated students who were expected to be there, who we would expect would have gotten vaccinated with the hopes of attending physical in-person schooling. But they got vaccinated, but they aren't in the schools. There's also some mention here about some people who engaged in some protest action about the students not being allowed in school, and to each their own. If I could understand the sentiment, to me it does not make sense. The policies don't add up. They aren't with the science. I don't agree with that. But sometimes you wonder about proper tactics and knowing what would be effective and what would just get you into trouble without actually getting any solutions to the matter. But to each their own, I guess. And further on the science of it, following the science. The whole idea of the science, I'm letting it be known here one time. If you hear me using it, even in the contemplations, 99.9% of the times I'm being sarcastic or ironic. Because the whole idea of how the science is used, whichever side of the science you are on, just the idea of how it is used has lost a scientific edge. The science now is used as a religious totem, as a religious lightning rod. Similar to how many religions and many people have used the power of religion for eons, for millennia, to say, okay, once I say God and I say God told me to do this, then there's no questioning left. That's how many people are using the science now. The science says this and now there's no questioning left. That's it. That's not actually what the science is. But again, the science. An article here from the pediatrician, Dr. David Bratt. He wrote an opinion piece here in The Guardian entitled We Know. And it's interesting. He speaks about things that are known now about children and this pandemic, and about the reality of the science in that terms, comparing now to the government policy. The situation with schools is not good. Online schooling is a failure. What was already a messy and dysfunctional education system in TNT, where too many children are regularly put down by teachers, has been worsened by government's handling of the COVID-19 epidemic. Okay. The latest fiasco is the decision to allow only vaccinated children into schools. Children have to be vaccinated to enter schools, but not teachers, security guards, cleaners, roadside vendors, or the people who transport children. The priority in vaccination for COVID are adults, not children. And that is the reality of all the evidence, all the scientific evidence we have seen so far. To me, that could have been written and copied and pasted over and over again as the proof of this article. The priority for vaccination are the adults, not the children. If we exist in a system where you are inhibiting the children from accessing something that is supposed to be beneficial for them, and the purpose you are inhibiting them is for this thing that the adults aren't even required to get quite yet, that does not make sense. And really and truly, it isn't fair. And in the article, you can feel free to read it, he goes on to explain and detail how, as the pandemic went on, it was very interesting that as the data was brought in, they noted that children aren't suffering from this disease. They aren't getting it as easily. They aren't sharing it as easily. It seems like it's much more common for the adults to give it to the children and vice versa. When you're seeing spread in schools, it's because you're seeing spread in communities. And if there isn't any community spread, then there isn't school spread. There aren't many spreads you're seeing coming from the schools and entering into the communities. So there is some science and data in on this. And also, he points out how in so many different countries, they have seemingly bent over backward. They have started schools in forests. They have reinvigorated their entire HVAC systems, redone the entire thing, have systems where where the windows open every 15 minutes to ensure that they have fresh air and ventilation, just to make sure their schools go on. And he was speaking about that in terms of the importance that those places put on their education. And I think that is a pertinent point. But I don't think Trinidadian parents aren't interested, though, in their children doing better in their education. I think Trinidadian parents, as many of these small island parents are very, very, very interested and in tune with educating their child and making sure their children reach to the top of the education level. It's just the nature of the system that we have has, for quite some time, greatly limited the extent to which many parents could do that on their own. But in Trinidad, anyone who went to school in Trinidad from 2000s onward, especially, would have known that the lessons industry in Trinidad has been booming for quite some time. Because, again, I think that shows that's a sign of how interested Trinidadian parents are in the education of their children. Lessons has been a big industry for decades now. And now, I think some of that lessons mentality may be going on into bigger things, and may even in fact be creating newer industries. Now, here's a post that I saw from Kerwin Springer. He is one of the primary online teachers right now. I'm not sure what the comparable numbers are, who might have the most, but I know him and the Student Hub, by extension, they teach a lot of students in the thousands all around the Caribbean. And this is anecdotal, but I think from where it's coming from, it's an important anecdote. And he was saying, I'm getting an increasing amount of calls and messages about parents interested in pursuing the private candidate option rather than giving their children the jab. It's a very complex situation. Teachers who are vaccinated do not want to expose themselves to unvaccinated students. Some teachers exercise their right in not getting vaccinated. Students who are vaccinated do not want to be around unvaccinated gatherings. Last year, no student was vaccinated against COVID, and everyone came out and got the labs and SBAs done. This time, not sure how that's going to go down for the whole student population. This year, for students who have adapted and thrived with online learning, parents are wary with rocking the boat. Thoughts? Blended learning requires increased manpower and some serious logistical planning. Teaching students home and school at the same time, there are solutions, but are we equipped or trained for them? That's the question I keep asking. The solutions that some people propose for this, are we even trained to do these things? And is it that as the public education system continues to go down seemingly that spiraling route, are we going to see more of these private online schools, more of private schools in general growing and expanding to more people? Like, one of the ideas that I've been reading about, and it's an expanding concept in some other countries. I don't know how many of them are actually happening in Trinidad. I believe I heard some people speak about it already here, but I'm sure it's not that expanded quite yet. But the pod learning idea, where some parents, 10 parents come together and they hire a teacher to teach their 10 children or the children of these 10 parents. And in that pod of 10 with that teacher is where these children would stay learning. And the results, as would be predicted, have been astronomical. Of course, because you have one teacher who's getting to know 10 people. And if you think about it, what would a parent be willing to pay a teacher per month to teach their student every day? I'd say easily more than $1,000. And if you have 10 parents doing that, willing to put over that $1,000 each, easily making over what would have been a public school teacher's salary. And that's very possible. And I think if the education ministry and our public school system in general doesn't get its act together, we're going to be forced to end up in some situations like this, because Trini parents are not going to just leave it be while their children remain suffering. And do not be mistaken, many parents who have their unvaccinated children, you may have your opinion of them, but they do not want their children to remain without an education. And necessity is the mother of invention, they say. So I think, should it continue as it's going, we are going to see some of this more inventive style in schooling. Tell me what you think. Drop a comment. That's all I have for now. I hope you are educated, informed, or entertained. And yes, tell me what you think about it. Do you think that we are on the cusp of that change? Or do you think that the ministry is still able to pull this back? And this is just some hiccups in the earlies. It's all going to smoothen out. And if we sit and wait and look and see, it's going to be fine. By Christmas, this is all going to be in the past tense. Tell me what you think, and I hope you are subscribed also, because I'll see you again tomorrow for the next video.
And you feel the music, rising with the time.